Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to inverter into my 2017 Jeep Wrangler, but these instructions will apply to everything. These are some of the basic tools I'll be using for this. These aren't quite the right tools. I didn't have all of mine. Some of them I left at work, but it'll be good enough to get this done. So first things first, I'm just going to do some kind of pre-work in my living room that I could do. So I'm just going to wire up some of the terminals. I'm going to wire in my fuse switch, so you can do like this or like a linkable fuse or any sort of normal fuse, as long as it's set to the right amperage, will work fine. I just got this one because I wanted to be able to reset it if there is some kind of short. Then I'm also going to put the terminals on my relay. So these has a screw in it just to take the screw out. There's also a little adapter if you have a smaller wire. And then this piece I'm not going to need. You may need in whatever you're doing, depending on what gauge cable. You don't have to use like fancy bought cable. You could use a jumper cable. That's junk if you really want to. Any kind of large grade cable is going to work if you have a high amperage inverter like I do. So these screws aren't the best for getting your wires in securely, so you got to really make sure that it's in there properly and tight enough where it's not going to just fall out on its own. Alright, now I got my terminal in. So moving on to the other side, I'm just going to measure out enough. I use some electrical tape to sort of keep the terminal more securely in place so it doesn't fall off, because these aren't the best, the crimp style connectors. So now you got to put in the two wires for the whatever switch you're going to use, whether you're using the car's battery or like an actual switch, or just using one of the car on, like if you're piggybacking a fuse, then you have to do that. But I'm just going to wire it up for a normal switch. And twist these wires before you insert it. Try to give the crimp the best chance. Alright, first things first, whenever you're doing something like this, you've got to take the negative off of the battery so you don't short anything or cause any kind of issues. I had a friend once not do this, put in a heavy gauge wire, accidentally touched it to the body of the car, which is grounded to the negative side, and actually shorted it and welded the cable to the side of his car. Alright, and then mine's kind of a different style connector, so it's a little bit stuck. I'm going to go ahead and take this all the way off because I've got some eyelet connectors on here from a different project that I did. So what I'm doing here you really shouldn't do. You shouldn't have eyelets on the actual connector itself. You see there's a little post just next to it, but mine car I bought new. For some reason didn't have a bolt in there, so I didn't use the connector on there. I used the one that goes directly to the battery. But if you notice on the positive side, I do have it on the proper spot. This is one of those don't do as I do, do as I say. And then we got the negative off, stop the battery from shorting. Make sure you don't lose those in the meantime, because if you do, you're kind of out of luck, because good luck driving to a parts store if you can't start your car. And I'm going to go ahead and take off the bolt from my accessories on the positive side. And I did this really slowly in the end, because I one time accidentally took it off too fast and dropped the bolt down. And below here is a tray, so there's no way to have it fall through the car. You have to go digging around and find it. So I'm going to go ahead and put the positive side here. Make sure you always have either your fusible link, your fuse, or your breaker like I do before any relays or anything else, or the power itself. It's got to be the first thing the power gets to, so if there is a short, it'll shut off immediately. Let's go ahead and tighten this back up. I mean, since you have the negative off, there's no issue tightening up everything to power right away. Alright, then I'm going to go ahead and zip tie my cables on here, just to keep them from moving around in the engine and getting tangled up on anything. Alright, so I've got everything wired in. I've got my fuse over here. I got my extra length of cable I've run through to the cabin. And I've got some wire spooled out to now go ahead and measure sort of how long. My fusible link is zip tied to the loom. You could screw all this in if you wanted to. And yeah, these cables I'm going to now zip tie up and run to wherever I have my switch at, just to sort of keep them out of the way of anything. There's nothing moving over here, but it's still good to keep them out of the way of any kind of hot part or engine parts in general. Alright, as you can see, that's the cable pass-through that my car has built in. So there is a little rubber grommet that's got holes in it, and you can run it through there. Here's what I'm using. I'm using these switches that I installed myself, so your car won't have these. So yeah, I've got these switches, and I'm going to run the power inverter to these switches. You can run it directly to a battery if it has an on-off switch, if you choose to. Also, you could run it so you got the positive there and the ground there. So that's how you got to wire that one up. And then over here, if you wanted to, I've done it on something else because this switch panel has a block. You could get a piggyback fuse off Amazon or AutoZone, wherever, run it off there. So when you turn your car on, power will be applied to it. So here it is all wired in. I got my positive and my ground wired to the relay. And this is kind of hard to see, but it's from the inside of the car. It's the rubber grommet up under the dash by the brake pedal. And then now I'm just going to, sorry, it's a little bit dirty in here. I'm going to run this cable through underneath the carpet to the back and then into the trunk, because that's where I'm going to keep it for now. I put my negative over here up by the front, which you don't have to do. I did this because I'm not quite sure where I want to have it be full time. You could just wire it to any part of the body and that'll be plenty, because since the body's grounded, or the frame, or wherever, as long as it's metal on metal. This is the inverter I'm going to use. I'm just going to sort of tuck it in here and wedge it in to the carpet for now. This is temporary. I'm going to find a spot where I want it eventually and actually bolt it in like you're supposed to. But for now, I'm just going to wire it up. Alright, now I've got the inverter wired in. I've zip tied the cables to the roll cage so that they don't put any stress on these, because they also have the screw type connector, which isn't very strong. It is out of the way of the seat belt. It rubs a little bit, but that should be alright. Nobody usually sits in the back. So now that I've got everything wired up, I can go ahead and reconnect my negative terminal. So I've made sure I didn't lose my little battery clip or the accompanying nut that goes on it. Let me put this terminal back on for my switch panel. Alright, now I'm going to tighten this up. You may hear some beeping or whatever, and depending on your vehicle. Always be careful to put it on right away. You don't want to hold it too close, or else you get an arc from the terminal to the battery itself, which can be bad for the battery. Alright, now let's go ahead and test it. So my car is running now. It's charged up a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and go take a look. The power isn't currently on. The switch is turned off. And as you can see, the little light does not come on. Regardless of if I turn it on or not, the light will stay off. That's good. That means it's not getting power. Go ahead and turn the switch on. And then as you can see, we have the light. It's now on. It made a beeping noise, basically saying, hey, it's on now. Turn it off, turn it on. And then let's go check my breaker. there's a little button on the breaker here, so if I hit that, it'll flip it for me. And that should get rid of power to the inverter. I heard a low power beep, and as you can see, the light is back off. So that's everything. Thanks for watching, and subscribe for more.